Cleveland, and I'm here today with two of our PAPC preeminent artists. One of our masters, Errol Jacobson, who has joined us. Errol, as you probably all know, famous for his atmospheric Chicago landscapes and other paintings in a gallery, Reinhardt Fine Art, which we had the opportunity to hear from in some of our preview videos. And we're also going to talk with Carlene Rivera. And Carlene is also a very established artist, pastelist, right, Carlene? And if you follow her on Facebook, you spend a good portion of the summer watching her win awards. So these are two perfect people to talk to us about the part of our journey once you're finished with your painting in terms of building your marketing career and your rep. So that's the setup. You can chat in any questions that you might have for either one of these folks. I talked a little bit in a video just as a setup about selling off your easel. I'm just going to hit on a couple of the points from there. Some, I guess you would call them hacks. I found having a QR code that takes people right to my store very helpful, especially during COVID, because when they came up to me, I could step back. And people seem to love to scan your QR code and go right to your store or your website. So I just stick one on the back of my easel. And the other thing I'd encourage you to do is to engage people. Have a story, you know, a very consumable story ready to go when people walk up to you and ask you about your work that you're familiar with. So those were really some highlights from selling off your easel. Today, we're going to spend some time with these two individuals talking about the role of shows and fairs, competitions, and galleries and media. And Errol, you said it best when you said something about building your rep. And I know it's, you know, you started out a while back, but talk to me a little bit about some of your thoughts around being in these big competitions. How do you select them, and how's your experience been?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I've been painting for I started when I was 30, I'm 74 now. So, you know, 44 years. I didn't sell a painting for the first 30 years. You know, I mean, I just painted because I like to paint, and my emphasis still is not on selling, but getting better, you know, until, you know, I have my final brush stroke. That's what's important to me. But getting to the sales part of it, it's always good to sell. I mean, it's nice to get your artwork out there and kind of validates you, all of us as an artist, whether we're selling a painting for $10 or $10,000. So anyways, Mark, what I think you're referring to is the national shows, the OPAs, Oil Painters of America, the American Impressionist Society, NOPES, the National Oil Painters and Acrylics, I think it is. And there's probably more too. And there's plenty of national shows for artists to enter. My thought about that is, if you're fortunate to get in one of these shows, it gives you some street cred, you know, to a certain extent, and it might open up doors. Like that's how actually I got into Reinhardt Fine Art, which is a great gallery, because I was in a national OPA show, and they published a catalog, and they saw my work in the catalog, and, you know, so they contacted me. So I think it's good from that standpoint of trying to get in these shows. I think you have to be ready to be in these shows. If you're a beginner painter, it might be, you know, a little bit too soon. What I would recommend doing is going to the OPA's website, the American Impressionist website, see the work, see how your work measures up. Just, you know, see if you're ready for it. If you are ready for it, then by all means, go for it. I'll just give you a caveat though. These shows are difficult to get into. There's lots of rejections. And I've had my share of rejections, as I'm sure anybody who's on this site who has entered these shows knows. It's, you know, for OPA, they might have 3,000 entries for 150 spaces, and they're all good paintings. So it's a matter of, like, you know, who the judge is. You know, your work might be as good as anybody else's, but So, yeah.
Errol, I've heard, and Carlene, I'm going to go to you, same kind of questions around competitions and fairs. So you can think about what tipping that up. But I wanted to do a follow-up with Errol real quick. Errol, do you have, or when you were starting out, did you have a budget for these? Because these are quite expensive and there's so many of them.
You have to, like OPA and AIS, American Equestrian Society, almost all of them, you have to become a member.
Right.
And to become a member, you just write a check. And
Right.
it's like $60 or $70. Right. And then for each show, it's like, $35 or $40. And if you do get in, then you have to ship it, depending how big your paintings are. And so it can add up to dollars, but,
And let me ask you, Carlene, can you talk a little bit about your experience? Because I was joking a little bit in the setup, but you participate in a lot of area fairs and events. I think you're in Southport and you're in some of the shows downtown. I often see an award coming out of that show. So talk to me a little bit about how you select those and why you participate in those events.
Sure. I have to agree with Errol. You want to get yourself out there. My story is a little different. I'm actually just coming back to my arts. I did the art fairs, competitions, exhibitions for a long time, and I had to get a corporate job. And I actually did that corporate job full-time for about 20 years. And in 2020, I was downsized. So I decided to retire and go back to my art. So I really only have, this is only the second year of doing art full time. So I'm almost starting over. For many years, I specialized in pastel. So I would enter the pastel competitions throughout the country. And like Errol says, you got to be a member, and then you enter their show and so forth. I discovered plein air last year. So I only have 1 year under my belt of that. And I'm still learning so much with plein air. So I did about 4 or 5 plein air events last year. And I'm going to repeat those this year, but I'm trying to branch out into other opportunities. I did apply to be artist in residence at the Dunes. So I should hear back later this month if that's going to be a possibility. I also applied to a big plein air event in Grand Traverse. That's normally invitational, but you can apply for that. So I'm trying to slowly expand my horizons. I have been very fortunate. In fact, I just came back this morning from Indianapolis. There was a Midwest jury competition, and I got 3 pieces accepted into that show. And I got an award last night, so it was a lot of fun.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's just putting yourself out there and trying a little this, trying a little that, and seeing what happens.
So Errol, you mentioned not getting into it so much for sales, but the validation and the relationship with people. Can you each talk a little bit about, and I'll start with Errol, talk a little bit about, people coming up to your easel and having a conversation with them and making them comfortable with you and all that.
Right. Well, as we all know, when we paint plein air, like Scott Tallman Powell said, we are sitting ducks. We're easy targets to come up to people to come up to us. And actually, when I teach once a year for over 10 years at the Palette and Chisel, have a workshop, and some people are afraid of just that fact that they don't feel comfortable painting, for instance, in a city setting, because they're afraid of people coming up. So I welcome people coming up. I let them know that I'm working. However, if they if they're interested in buying a painting, they sort of let me know. And what I've been doing, I don't pick a location to sell a painting. I pick a location because I want to paint it. And I might not see anybody in certain locations, in a back alley or under a viaduct or something.
What about the fish place?
But
Not open?
in a lot of areas, people do come up, and
Okay.
when they come up, if they want to buy a painting, most of the time it's not done. And what I've been doing
Where is it
lately
from here?
is not trying to sell it right off the easel. I tell them that I'll send them I get their contact information, and I send them a photograph of it. I mean, I text it to them, and then it's sort of nuts, that's the way I've been doing it lately. And then if they like it, then they either come to my house / studio, and then I take a Venmo and Zelle for payment.
Well, and you touch on a very interesting topic that one of the collectors actually talked about, which was really needs to have a relationship with the artist before they decide to purchase a painting. So they're not just interested in a pretty picture for their wall or an investment. They're trying to create a relationship with an artist. So Carlene, talk a little bit about some of your experiences at fairs and events where you built relationships. I know you had a video to that topic prior to today.
Yes, I haven't actually sold directly off the easel. I seem to have more luck with sales maybe that are at the location that are associated with the plein air event. So kind of the afterward, when the work is finished. I find that most of the time people will relate to what you've painted as the location. It's something that means something to them. I had done a lake painting in Cedarburg last year, and the woman walks the trail every day of where I had painted. So the painting really spoke to her. Those kind of things. I know when we did the event at St. Mary's Church, I think it was, a lot of people were really looking for paintings of that church. So it could be the location that speaks to people.
Yeah.
It could be in the moment. They kind of want to know your story. What are you doing here? Why are you painting this?
Yeah.
And they're kind of amazed that we do have, like Errol says, we do have the gumption to be out there, putting ourselves out there and painting.
Yeah, and for me personally, there's nothing like that connection, to both of your points. I had a piece that I had for probably, well, I had it out for sale at a show at the North Shore Art League, and this guy came up to me, and I take, when I produce a piece, sometimes I'll look for groups, hashtag groups in Facebook or other things, and push the painting out to them too, if I think it's going to resonate with somebody there. And this one guy said, "Oh, my wife and I sit here every day, and this is our view." And he really couldn't afford the painting, but I was so pleased to make the connection with an individual who hung it over his bed in his house, or the woman who bought the bakery painting because she met her husband in line and they kissed for the first time or something, and to me, that's so much, that has so much more value than the monetary piece of it. When you talk about validation and all, I think that's the balance of doing this, is you're putting yourself out there and that piece of you out there, and you have to decide, how much of this needs to be compensation for my effort and how much of this is a connection with people, right? And that you're worthy, right? I want to move on to galleries. And I know, Errol, that you're in an established gallery now, you have for some time. So I'm going to throw the big question out there. Are galleries still essential? And let's tackle that a little bit.
Well, if you watch the videos that the one Mary produced, with the curator from the University of Chicago, I think he really said it very well. That yes, I think galleries are essential when you reach a certain level, because a lot of people don't have the confidence to buy a piece of art on their own. They need the so-called expert, to say this is a good piece of art. So I think, and also it's a way of, I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of times I'll like a piece of art online, and then I'll buy an artist and I'll see their work in person, and it doesn't resonate with me, and vice versa.
Uh-huh.
So when you see it in a gallery setting, I mean in person, because you can't go to each artist's house around the country, it's an advantage, And but I will say this, yeah, I think galleries are good. They're So I want to say this, it's interesting. I do most of my sales, even though the galleries do sell my work, most of my sales are coming from a variety of areas. I'd say 80% of my sales are through, my social media. I post on Facebook, I post on Instagram. I keep an email list, which is very important for everybody. Every time you sell a painting, even for $50, make sure you get that name and contact information. I know it's a little off subject, but I wanted to just.
Well, we'll get, yeah, it's right in the wheelhouse. So,
yeah. But I think galleries, I mean, some people say, oh, they take 50%, but they work very hard, for the artists, and they have a lot of expenses, and they've got staff, they've got the lights, the rent, and yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Kenneth Prendergast said it very well, where the artist relies on the gallery to establish that validation for those people who are interested in purchasing a piece. And they also, like for me, they've helped me a lot with pricing. What's your experience been with galleries, Carlene?
Well, since I've come back to my art, I haven't dealt with a lot of galleries, although I will have my first show later in September. Since I've come back to my art, I would agree with everything that Errol said, though they are essential. People feel more comfortable having that expertise and that knowledge. They feel better about the choices they're making to buy paintings. So I think galleries provide that support and motivation for people in those spaces. Whereas they may not be as comfortable, outside buying from the easel.
So you're at a great place then to talk to us a little bit about how you approach the gallery. So the days of running around with your big black portfolio and trying to get the gallery owner listening while you leaf through this big bag of paintings. Tell me about how you approach them now.
I actually have not approached any.
Yeah. Okay.
I am trying to build up my plein air portfolio and so forth. This show came about because I had a piece in the Hoosier Salon Gallery in Indianapolis, which is very well known in the area. And also I participated in the First Brush of Spring, which is the Hoosier Salon in New Harmony. And the director actually contacted me. She was an artist in residence at the Dunes, and we painted together one day. And she invited me to have this show. So again, back to those connections,
right?
Making things happen. But I am still new to the gallery scene. But
your point is right on the money. Errol, you said the same thing. You get into these shows, you put stuff out on media, and you don't really know where it's going to go. It's this network and these connections that bring you to these places. And so you may have a gallery on. So I would throw it back to you, Errol. Do you recommend new artists start chasing galleries, hitting them with emails? And I've heard a couple of the.
If you talk to the galleries are, they're inundated with artists submitting work. That I'm not discouraging anybody from doing that. I think one thing you got to think about is before you submit to a gallery, look at sometimes in their website they'll have submission guidelines. sometimes in their submission guidelines, they're saying they're not accepting any submissions.
Right.
You know, so you don't want to go there, but you want to make sure that your work fits in with that particular gallery. So I'm not going to submit my work to a place that we were just in Florida, you know, and we were in a gallery and they had like pictures of dolphins and beaches with palm trees. I mean, they had nothing like my work, you know, and or it might be a really super abstract where my work wouldn't fit in, or super old master, you know. So you have to be a fit for that gallery. And what was your question, Mark?
Well, it was about how to approach them, and I think you're talking about it a little bit. Do you
Yeah, well,
solicit it,
I
or
know that one thing is you can look at go to their websites and see what they have, and see if your work fits in, and then you know, then you can approach, you can contact them by email. And I know they don't like photographs; they want digital files, you know. And so I mean, I think it's kind of a you know, crapshoot, you know.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about media then, because I think, you know, we're gonna explore galleries more as we go on through the day. Let's talk a little bit about how each of you use media. And when I say media, I'm talking about, you know, Facebook, Instagram, newsletters, and all that. So, Carlene, I know you do a little bit of work on social media. Talk a little bit about how you employ that in your strategy.
Well, I usually post any new paintings that I'm doing on Facebook and Instagram. And I have a booth in an antique mall near me. And actually, it's great because I can have my work seen 7 days a week. And I have a guest book out there, and people sign it and give me their email addresses. So then I use that to send out monthly newsletters from my website, and just really try to keep up on that. Post any events, you know, like this exhibition I just talked about in Indianapolis. I need to post that, pictures of the opening, and people see you doing things out there, you know, and they really seem to like that.
Errol, tell me a little bit about how you use media, because I know you and I were talking a little bit about frequency, and you know, you mentioned earlier. You mentioned earlier how you post your pictures, and I love your paintings of, you know, this painting's off to a new home.
Right. Well, a couple things about media. I think it's good to post consistently, but not to overdo it. You know, and I like to post. I used to post. Once in a while, I'll post a progress shot, but I'm kind of getting away from that, where I just post finished paintings now. Every once in a while, I used to post shots of me, you know, in my studio working on a painting, and you know, that seemed to get a pretty good response. I think the trick is just to let people know that you're working, you're producing new work, and it kind of affects, like, actually a neighbor is moving out of state, and he came by and he says, you know, will you come by? I don't do many commissions of houses, but he's a neighbor. He says, oh, I follow all your postings. Keep posting. I love seeing your paintings. So even though they're not liking, they're seeing it, you know. And then every once in a while, I like posting a painting that is sold. I don't normally use the word sold. I usually say has found a new home or something like that. And I think from a business standpoint and from a marketing standpoint, I think it's good to do that, because it lets the collectors know who have bought your paintings that you're still being acquired by other people, and they weren't just crazy; they were the only crazy people.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so yeah, So I think it's good to shoot, studio shots, shots of yourself maybe painting on the street. And, oh, the other thing I want to say is my Facebook page, even though I don't have a business page, that's basically, I don't post anything personal on my Facebook page, hardly ever.
Yeah.
Same thing with Instagram. They're basically just for art. So you won't see pictures of what I had for dinner or, stuff like that.
I'm really interested in what you're having for dinner. So I have an interesting story on my own experience was when I started painting, I was throwing stuff on Facebook and selling it, because I paint all scenes in Evanston and I'll have a lot of followers on. And so people would ping me and say, can I buy that? And this one gallery was watching the frequency of that and hit me and said, stop selling your stuff on Facebook and let me put it in my gallery. So I think the thing that's really, and I'm telling the story because you never know where this stuff leads. Putting it out there is, it's just getting yourself out there is basically the story.
Oh, I've had galleries contact me over the years that wanted to carry my work. And, just because a gallery contacts you doesn't mean you necessarily want to be in that gallery. You
Yeah.
got to check out the gallery. Maybe if you have friends who are other artists, call them and see if they actually pay, they'll send the paintings back, so forth and so on. But being in the right, I just want to say one other thing about galleries. Being in the right gallery for your work, and I'll give you an example. There was a gallery, they're no longer in business. It was back in 2013 when she wanted me. It was the first gallery that I've ever been in. And it was after a plein air show. And she said, I'd like to represent you. And it was in Chicago. And I was, floored and flattered. And she took my pieces and put them up. But, she wasn't selling anything. And, but she didn't have for that long either. But then another gallery contacted me that was no longer in business. They were in Superior Street. And unfortunately, they're out of business, but they were a really good gallery. And I left that gallery that couldn't sell my work. And a piece that they had that they couldn't sell for $1,500, they took the same piece and sold it for $4,500 and sold it within 2 days. So it really is. They galleries are good because they can tell you. I never thought I would sell a piece for that amount of money ever.
Right.
And so a gallery can sometimes determine your market value too, and it depends who their contacts are and who their clientele is.
Right.
Whereas some people might not be able to even sell the piece for $500. It's kind of like that Freakonomics, that show that Mary had us all, but that suggested. I don't know if you guys listened to it.
Yeah, I've had good and bad experience with a couple of galleries too. So, I didn't know things like I'm not down the road that far, but if I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't have gone with the ones I went with at first. That kind of thing. So your points are well taken.
We all learn.
Yeah.
I made some big mistakes in my first gallery. It's huge. It's just a matter that I would never make again,
Well, these will be good conversations as we get deeper into the gallery topic this afternoon. I want to bring some of the chat to the conversation. So I'll open it up for either one of you, or the first one is, if you're on a budget, what are the best shows during the year that you should be targeting? So Carlene, why don't you start? You're in a fair amount of shows.
Well, I usually gravitate toward the ones that I'm a member of. The Cedarburg plein air event is very reasonable. The Southern Indiana one. The plein air events themselves are pretty reasonable. It's the accommodations that will get you when you're staying for days and days. Online groups, you got to pick and choose. Now, I had several pastel societies that I belonged to last year, but I had to choose. you know, because you can belong to so many, but not everyone is going to be beneficial. So obviously, groups that are around you.
Right.
For example, Southern Indiana seems to do a lot. There's a lot of art going on down there, but it's so far for me. I mean, you're talking
Right.
2-3 hours, and I can't do that. You know?
Errol, you talked
So
a little bit about that earlier on. Thank you, Carlene. You
Sure.
talked a little bit. How do you make that decision?
Well, you know, I'm actually doing any plein air events. I mean, I did a few, I don't do them. Not for any, I mean, I think they're great. And the ones that I've done Cedarburg. It was a lot of fun painting with, you know, you get to meet all the artists and socialize with them, and their shows are good. So I don't do a lot of shows. Actually, I don't do hardly any. But there are, like Carlene was saying, there's local shows here that are, I know there's one in Schaumburg that is coming up, and but I agree with Carlene. It's not the cost of the shows, it's the accommodations, and they're kind of far away. I mean, even if you do Cedarburg, it's an hour and a half up there, an hour and a half back, if you're going to commute every day,
Right.
for 2 hours. So you know,
So-
Chicago Artist Coalition, CAC, they post a lot of local shows. They're not necessarily plein air shows, but they have a listing of different open calls. I know there's Cava, I think it's called, that I don't belong to, and I know they have shows in Chicago. I think the Bridgeport Arts Center has local shows.
So in terms of, let's go back to a little more practical conversation as we're looking at some of the questions here. Carlene, you use Square, is that right?
Yes.
And I do too. You want to talk a little bit about pros and cons of that? How comfortable you are doing that?
Sure. I haven't really found any negatives to
No.
it. It's really easy to set up. It's really easy to use. It keeps great track of all your expenses, sales tax and everything. End of the year, you know, I just went right on, and it tells me how much sales tax I collected. So that's easy for tax season.
Right, you get a nice report, yeah.
Right. And I find it very convenient. And if people have access to last year's videos, Marcy Culkin
Right.
had a great video on it.
Right, and I find it very handy too, because you can hook it up with everything that people are gonna come at you with, you know, like now I sell a lot of prints, so I have, you know, Venmo, PayPal, you know, I can take Zelle, which is my preferred one, and I use the Square to scan the card. And I think it's, there's a couple of different levels of tools that you can buy for your phone, whether it's a tabletop unit or you know, something that just clips into the bottom of your phone that allows you to scan. So I'd encourage people to think about that and hook it up with your phone. It makes it easy to sell off the easel. I had this sign here. Yeah, I'll show you this. So this, I just stick this on the back of my box. Is that easy to see? I've got the chat open here. Let me just close it down a second. Yeah, so I just, it's not letting me do it. Hang on. All right, well, anyway, I'll put a picture of it. You can see my hand, but not that. I just have a thing with my name, you know, a little bit about me, and a QR code, and I just slap that right on the back of my box. Matter of fact, I have a Velcro strip on the back of that and a Velcro strip on the box, and I just pull it out of the box, stick it on that, and that's on the back of my easel. And I am just amazed at how many, you know, I'll look up from my painting and there'll be somebody on the other side going like this, you know, and you can strike up a conversation, which usually leads to, often it leads to, you know, some commission work as well. I want to I'm going to open up the chat one more time. Errol, there's a question about how much of your interest comes from the website versus other sources?
Hmm. Well, I've never broken it down.
Yeah.
I think a website, first of all, is really important. And I use Fazo, which is amazing. They have a great marketing feature. They have all kinds of information on how to market. They have seminars. I don't take advantage of all that. But I've sold paintings off, it's everything. It's cumulative. Off the website, off of Facebook, off of Instagram, off the street, in galleries.
Right.
It's kind of coming, when I have sales, it kind of comes from, all over the place. And I think that's, so I can't say it's like, I've broken it down, just, some years it'll be one more than the other.
Well, and I've seen a lot of interest come. So for me personally, I use Instagram as my, so I use Facebook to say I'm in a show, or here's a new painting I just finished, it'll just be a snapshot, push it out there. I use Instagram. The trend on Instagram is, the sausage making. People want to be involved in your process, and it's really easy to stand up a 30-second video that you can time lapse to show the underpainting, the painting, and then the finished piece, and put some music to it. And I get a huge amount of hits on those. And I don't want to do it all the time because it takes a while. I was last year at the point where every time I finished a painting, it was like, all right. And then the last step was to put it out on media. And I got a little tired of doing that because I was trying to go like twice a week. And I think if you're hitting it every day, it gets to be monotonous for you. And I'm not sure how your followers really feel about that. But I think overcoming the, am I worthy? Can I show my friends this on my site? And then how do I want to use these two tools? So I'm going to open it up to both of you then to share your last thoughts about this, how you're using media or anything else we talked about, selling off the easel and your comfort level and how to gain it.
Go ahead, Carlene.
I actually seem to do better in person with things than social media. I mean, I'll get the likes and the comments and everything, but I don't get as much action or selling off of social media as I do from being in person.
Yeah. So yours is face to face, and Errol, you just said that you're getting it from everywhere. So, right?
Yeah, and yeah. But I like, Mark, what you said about if you're doing paintings of rowboats, for instance, you find the groups that are interested in rowboats, and you'll get an amazing amount of likes. I mean, I experienced that, and it doesn't necessarily translate into sales necessarily,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to encourage all of you, if you haven't, to jump off, or to not jump off, but wrong. I want to encourage you to go out to the videos page and take a look at a video that was posted from a woman that I work with closely, Lisa Delantoni, and it's called Declare Yourself an Artist. And Lisa, really just talks about getting over yourself and this whole dilemma about, is it okay for me to post and to bother my friends and all that? Just declare yourself an artist and then engage your soft media contacts, followers, in a conversation that really helps bring them into the process. It's very rewarding for them and you. And a lot of the people who can't produce want to be a part of that. So like, for instance, before a show, I'll ask people, if I'm going into an environment where I'm going to paint and I haven't been there before, I'll ask people what are some of the popular places you think would make good paintings? And I'll get all kinds of feedback from people, and I'll go check those sites out. But it's a way of bringing people into the process, and then they get this, they feel connected to you, and they really, you get a strong following out of that. I also throw out 3, I can only put 2 paintings in this thing. Which one do you think I should put in? And people will weigh in, and I'm not sure whether I always use that, but I'm engaging followers to be part of my decision. They feel like they're part of my studio, So I'd encourage you to check out this video, Declare Yourself an Artist. And I want to take a minute just to thank Errol and Carlene for giving us their thoughts on so many topics related to building your reputation and stepping away from your easel to start to market yourself.
You're welcome.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Great.